Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life between it is a journey. From childhood to maturity, from youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often we pray back again. From health to sickness, and to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking at backward or ahead, we each see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey itself, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. For birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here today to remember, to celebrate, and most of all, to give honor that is due to our beloved Phyllis Alltmont. I'm Rabbi Todd Silverman, one of the associate rabbis here at Touro Synagogue. I'm joined by our Chazan, Cantor Kevin Margolius, and I'm honored to represent our entire Touro Synagogue staff here today. Our senior rabbi, Katie Bowman, who had to be out of town, but whose heart and love is here with Jack, Jeff, Michael, Marilyn, and their family. Our associate rabbi, Rabbi Lily Kowalski, our executive and administrative staff, for whom Phyllis's warmth and hellos and gentle kindness was a consistent presence. Before we formally begin, just to note that if you need a space to collect yourself, or if you need restrooms or water, you can find them right through our foyer, through the front stained glass doors. And please also note that our front main entrance to the sanctuary is still blocked by viewing stands and a fence, which is something you only say at a New Orleans funeral. So if there's any need to exit the building, please do so through the foyer doors here, through the back exit of the sanctuary on the side, or through this gate right up here. Earlier today, a small circle of Phyllis's loved ones and closest family members gathered at Hebrew Rest Cemetery to fulfill the sacred act of Kivorah, Jewish burial, a quiet ritual, peaceful even, and yet robust and bursting with the love that still does and always will linger for her and for the life that she lived. Here now in our sanctuary, we memorialize Phyllis even more, as we all will, I know, continue to do so in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. We, her expansive community of mourners who loved her deeply, gather for another simple ritual, to tap into our love, which perseveres now as grief, and to support her beloved family, Jack and Marilyn and Paul and Jeff and Rachel and Michael and Ava and Mary Lynn and all of her grandkids, the greatest blessings that Phyllis ever received. And now, you all, it is our responsibility as your community, as your congregation, to surround you with love and support however you may need. I don't need to say it, but it's my honor to, that this was an amazing woman, an incredible human being that walked the earth so delicately and so forcefully. It's hard to put into words the kind of woman that Phyllis was. And I say this as someone who only knew her for a snippet of her long and cherished life. It's hard to put into words who she was. But luckily, our Jewish tradition has a thing or two that we already know about amazing women. From the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, Eshet Chayil, mi yimsa, a woman of valor, who can find her? Far beyond pearls is her value. Her husband's heart trusts in her and lacks nothing. She is good to him all the days of her life. She seeks out wool and linen, and her hands work diligently. Like a merchant's ship, she from afar brings her sustenance. She rises while it is still nighttime and gives food to her household and a ration to those who surround her. She considers a field and purchases it, and from the fruit of her handiwork she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and performs her tasks with vigor. She, this woman, senses that her enterprises are good, and her lamp, her light, is not extinguished at night. She puts her hand to the distaff, and her palms support the spindle. She gives generously to the poor, extending her hands to the needy. She fears not snow for her household, for her entire household is clothed in scarlet wool. Bedspreads and blankets she makes for herself. Linen and purple wool for majesty are her clothing. Well known at the gates is her husband as he sits with the elders of the land. Garments she makes and sells, and she delivers a belt to the peddler. Strength and splendor are her clothing, this woman, and smilingly she awaits her last day. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teachings of kindness are on her tongue. She anticipates the needs of her household. The bread of idleness she does not eat. Her children rise to celebrate her, and her husband, he praises her. Many women have attained valor, but you, they say, have surpassed them all. Charm can be deceitful and beauty can be vain, but a woman such as this, she is to be praised. So let us now laud the fruits of her hands, her body, her mind, and her heart. Wherever we gather, let the knowledge of her deeds speak to her praise now and forevermore. In addition to the words from our tradition, there are poetic words of love and remembrance that we would like to offer now. It's my honor to invite two of Phyllis's dearest friends, Jan and Susan, to offer us a reading.
Each of us has a name given by God and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our shortcomings and given by our longing.
Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our works. Each of us has a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death.
The first name I ever called Phyllis was Mrs. Alltmont, and she promptly told me that that was the one and only time I should ever call her that. "It's Phyllis," she said, "and you're Todd." Her favorite name was Mimi. I think anybody who met her for about 5 minutes learned that the easy way. She also loved being called Mom. So I'd like to invite up Jeffrey and Michael to offer some words that only a child can speak about their mother.
"3041 Canterbury Road in Birmingham, Alabama was a traditional, idealistic family home. Everything was always in the right place. You wore inside shoes inside and outside shoes outside. There wasn't a speck of dust anywhere nor a drop of oil in the inside garage under the house. Sydney was the head of the household and the breadwinner. Goldie was the homemaker, Marilyn the older sister, and Phyllis Jane was the youngest. I would imagine that through the lens of Phyllis Jane, this was what she expected her life to look like. However, that lens became fogged and cleaned again when at age 16 she met Jack Alltmont, a hardworking, good student who at the time made up 1/4 of the overall Jewish population of Reserve, Louisiana. My grandparents and Uncle Charles were the other 3/4. Over the span of 62 years, my folks grew together and complemented each other. Mom's sense of humor became more accepting of my dad's sense of humor, and my dad learned that pig fat is not traditionally or ever used as a binding ingredient in making matzo balls. They leaned on each other through illness and emotionally impossible times. They grew from a family of 2 to a family of 4 with Michael and myself, and continuing to extend with Rachel, Jacob, Sydney, Hannah, Ava, Tatum, and Evie, making us a family of 11. The thing that always drove me crazy about my mom is that she never gave herself credit for anything. She didn't see herself as the smart and capable person that she was. She took care of everyone because that's who she was. In her mind, there was never obligation or reciprocation expected or implied. It was the right thing to do and simply who she was. I think it was at some point in middle school where I was feeling insecure about my ability or lack thereof academically. I told her that I didn't think that I was smart. She told me that she often felt that she wasn't smart. The thing she did tell me was that the degree you have hanging on the wall wasn't who you are. The most important thing in life is to be a good and decent person. This is always at the top of my mind when thinking about who my mom was and who she thought I should be as a person. Over the last few months, I've communicated with many of you here today, in person, phone calls, texts, and email, and I've been taking notes the entire time, knowing that I wanted to remember what everyone was saying to me, and I want to share some of the thoughts and words that were told to me in describing who my mom was to people and how she had impacted them on a personal level. Kind, dedicated to family, dear friends, and community. Caring. She taught me about the kind of mother-in-law I want to be. Generous. If you are lucky enough to have a friend like Phyllis, you are beyond blessed. Insightful. We laughed a lot together. Thoughtful. The confidence she gave me. She encouraged me. Authentic. When I think of your parents, I think of pure love. She is so kind and soft-spoken, wise, encouraging. That's my girl. Empathetic. We clicked instantly. Gracious. She was my first friend at Tulane. Inclusive. She was my first friend in New Orleans and made me feel welcomed. Sweet. She loved celebrating good times and had M&Ms for every occasion, and color selection was always appropriate and legendary. Incidentally, there are white gift bags with red hearts on them on all the tables in the reception hall with M&Ms as a sweet treat from Mom to all of you all. Smart. Do you know how many storage shelves are dedicated to her at various stationery and party planning businesses in New Orleans? Every friend of ours from high school and college and beyond referred to her as Aunt Phyllis. She endeared herself to all, often witty, even when she didn't know she was sometimes. Amazing. And this last bit, I'm quoting in full, so this is not mine, but it just kind of read like a poem to me. and I promise I won't call you out, but you are here. A card for every season or just for no reason, except to make you smile, not because anyone asked, but you'd find matzo ball soup at the front door if you were sick or brownies if you were sad. An extra seat at the table, always open. A friend whose caring went farther than the moon. A person who loved family. There are no words to describe its depth. And just in case you need an example of a true marriage of the heart, look no further than Phyllis and Jack. Smart as a whip, a huge dose of common sense, and a wicked sense of humor with great timing, end quote. To my Aunt Mary Lynn, my Aunt Marilyn, Uncle Paul, my cousins Amy, Lisa, Stephen, Nan, Ellen, the great nieces and nephews, the family friends who are family, Rabbi Silverman, Rabbi Bowman, Kenner Margolius, Miss Barbara, Miss Moran, Miss Renee, and Miss Jean, all of the nurses and doctors at Touro. We are beyond grateful for all of the love and much needed support you gave us, especially to my father. Additionally, Rachel, there are hardly any words to express how thankful I am, we are, for you. You dropped literally everything and took on the role of advocate for my mom morning, noon, and night for the last few months. She loved you so very much, and you were her daughter. Lastly, I promise, to my mom, I have been so fortunate and incredibly spoiled to have had you as my mom for 53 years. I have seen up close your kindness and the very special way you had with everyone you encountered. You were Phyllis, Mom, Aunt Phyllis, Miss Phyllis, and Mimi. I know that Mimi was your favorite title. You were an amazing grandmother. The things that you went along with for our 3 children was so out of character. You listened to stories and words from the kids that would make a sailor blush. You ziplined in the jungle. They got you to say all kinds of words that were never, ever, ever in your vocabulary. You became a Swiftie and loved it. You wore a swimsuit. You taught Jacob to cook. You shopped online with Hannah a lot. You may or may not have watched Sydney cheat at Monopoly countless times. You had both serious and really funny conversations with our 3. We all laughed a lot, and I got to see all of it, which has been my greatest joy. I love you.
So I've never known life without my mom. I've never wanted to. Since she got her Alzheimer's diagnosis and we began to see its effects, I've grappled with the pain that one does when a loved one falls sick. And you begin to see the changes that you know are permanent and anticipate the changes likely to come. Not that any of us knew it would be this fast. But in spite of that, I've also felt a real sense of gratefulness. Grateful to have been born to someone so kind, so warm, so loving, and so giving. My mom was an Alabama lady who would never say, well, bless your heart, which is not to say she couldn't be judgy. She could. She just knew how to keep it close to the vest. At her core, though, she was not judgy. She was quite the opposite. My mom was an activist. That might sound odd. Phyllis Alltmont, activist. But she was, not in a political sense, but in her communities, those that she created and those that she built. She was active in my life, my dad's, my brother's, cousins, aunts, uncles, her grandchildren, her parents, Goldie and Sydney, when they were alive, and the lives of many, many close and dear friends, too many to name individually, If I tried, we'll never make it to the reception. And she was active in the lives of so many people that came through the doors of Gentry, Newman School, Jewish Community Center, and this Touro Synagogue, which meant so much to her, all of which she was not only a member of, but took leadership roles over the course of decades. My mom was a giver. She gave new meaning to care packages. And anyone who ever got a care package from Phyllis Alltmont, probably most of the people in this room at a wedding, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, birthday, anniversary, or just because she sensed that you could use a care package, know at least to a degree what I'm talking about. When I was living in New York, I had to remind her that I lived in a very small apartment and there just wasn't room for all that great stuff she'd send my way for nearly every conceivable holiday, real or made up. But she was right. You cannot suffocate people with kindness, try as she might. My mom was smart, and she was progressive. Again, not in a political way. But she had a good sense about where things were headed and where they should be headed, and she leaned in. She was instrumental in hiring Touro's first female rabbi, a move that set Touro up for tremendous success over the last 20 years. And anyone who's seen the exponential growth in the number of children on this bima, crowding this bima to collect their chocolates on a Friday night, you know exactly what I'm talking about. My mom met the moment. She never missed a birthday or anniversary or major life event. She always remembered what was going on in your life and asked you about it. She was interested and curious in everyone she loved and cared about, and she loved and cared about so many people. And like kindness, there's no cap to love, no ceiling. And she intuitively knew that. Even in her last days, as she faded physically, her spirit did not. Up until the last moment, she was warm and kind and generous in giving, something every doctor, nurse, and caretaker meeting her for the first time in her final days recognized instantly. And I'm really going to miss that. I said at the top that through this process, I felt grief and gratefulness, and that I've never known life without my mom, and I've never wanted to. But she also taught me that one of the guarantees of life, in addition to death and taxes, and in the case of Phyllis Alltmont, love and kindness, was change. And she taught this in a perverse way. She hated change. The dinner options at Restaurant Alltmont growing up were pretty limited, but she knew change was part of life's journey. And while this was not a change I ever wanted to experience, I'm lucky to have had her as my mom and all that came with it, just as so many of you have been lucky to have had her as a wife, as a grandmother, a mother-in-law, a sister, an aunt, a friend, and the list goes on. She not only left the world better than she found it, she left the people she touched better than she found them. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for being so wonderful, so sweet, so loving, so good-humored, so strong, so smart, and for being such a great mom. I love you and I miss you.
Adonai ro'i lo achsar. The 23rd Psalm has given comfort to our people for generations. It doesn't make promises that can't be kept, the end of evil, sunshine instead of shadows, the end of suffering or pain. It makes but one promise, only this, that we are not alone. Adonai ro'i lo achsar binot asher yarbitzeni al me'manuchot yenar ינחני במעגלי צדק, ינחני במעגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגץ המוות לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי, דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסון, אדוני רואי לא אחסון.
Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God maketh me to lie down in green pastures and lead me beside still waters, renewing my life, guiding me in the right paths, as befits God's name. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no harm, for you, God, are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread before me a table in view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overfloweth. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God for all time. Jewish life is replete with moments that call for blessings, even moments of sadness. The two moments that have for many generations been viewed by our sages and by our teachers as the two most wonderful moments in Jewish life are chuppah and b'nai banim, your marriage canopy under which you join together with your beloved, and the children of your children, your grandchildren, a redemption. A redemption for what? The rabbis don't tell us, but it has to do with putting up with their kids for so many years. So I'd like to invite up two folks, two of Phyllis's most beloveds, to speak some words from their perspectives that only they have, her beloved Jack and her granddaughter Sydney.
Over the past few weeks, all I've been able to think about is my Mimi, so I thought it best to share some of my favorite moments with and about her. When I was younger, around 8 years old, I used to beg Mimi to take me to Friday night services with her. At the time, I didn't know what I was signing myself up for, but I was excited to be able to spend time with her. She taught me what it meant to be Jewish, both spiritually and in practice, through her leadership in the temple and her continuous generosity to everyone she met. She was the first person to teach me how to read the Hebrew in the prayer book, and the first letter I got at camp every summer. She always signed her letters with a big smiley face, and I've always assumed it was because she was so happy to see me happy and share in the joy of that fact. I used to joke with my Mimi that she was not an outdoor lady, that she spent too much time inside hiding from the sun. I made sure to remind her of this every time I saw her, no matter where we were or what we were doing. So when we went to Costa Rica, this was no exception. I continued to tell her until finally she decided to go ziplining with us 100 feet in the air. She took it like a champ and did the full course. The first thing she said to me after that was, after doing that, I am definitely an outdoor lady. She never let me call her an indoor lady ever again. She was determined to prove me wrong and did just that. One of the best things about Mimi is how she has always been invested in all of our activities, whether that be shopping, gossiping, or important things like cooking. Whenever we went over to Mimi and Elvis's for dinner, she and Jacob would always make deviled eggs as a side to our meal. When we would come to the house, the eggs were already boiled and ready for Jacob and her to do the rest of the cooking together. They would stand in the kitchen and talk and laugh about anything and everything while preparing the food. Once the food was done, Mimi would bring it to the table and wait for everyone else to get their food and be seated before getting her own. She never ate before everyone else was served and settled. She always knew how to put a smile on everyone's faces no matter the time or place. Mimi has always been very kind to everyone. She never wanted to disappoint or hurt anyone's feelings, so instead of saying no, she would say, "I'll think about it." I remember sitting at the top of the steps of her second floor, looking down at her telling me to go to sleep. I asked her if I got in my bed if I could stay up and hang out with her, and she looked at me and said, "I'll think about it." I looked at her and said, "So you're not going to hang out with me?" And she gave me the biggest smiles, looked me in the eyes, and said, "I'll think about it." My Mimi has always provided for me. My favorite dessert of all times is the chocolate cake she makes, and she knows it, so without fail, for my birthday every year, I get Mimi's chocolate cake. No matter how many times my cake randomly disappears in the night, she's always made me another one to ensure I'm always able to have one more slice. She's always been caring in that way, able to do something to make someone's day better without being asked to do so. She always remembers the little things, like when I was 5 and I told her I liked gummy bears, or 2 years later when I told her I liked Skittles. I have never stopped receiving either of the two. But that is just how Mimi is. She pays attention to the little details of everyone's life that no one else picks up on. Throughout the past few months, no matter how much she's been in pain or struggled, she's masked it to ensure that everyone is living their lives to the fullest. Even in the hospital, she would laugh and make jokes with us, even when it hurt her to laugh or speak along. When she would hear Hannah and I crying by her bed, her first instinct was to ask us what was wrong and to comfort us even though we interrupted her slumber. She reiterated to us countless times that she was happy and at peace because she had everyone she loved by her side. In my final conversations with Mimi, she reiterated to me countless times that I'm going to be okay and to take care of my family as she could no longer do so. That is exactly who Mimi is, selfless and caring. Even in her hardest moments, she was thinking about others. My whole life, my Mimi has been my inspiration on how to live a life filled with kindness, service, and humility. I know that wherever she is, she will continue to guide me and help me become a better person than I am today. Mimi signed every note, every card, and every text she sent with a heart. And how fitting she left us on Valentine's Day, a day devoted to love, signing off one last time, just as she always did, with hearts and love. I love you forever, Mimi.
Thank you all for being here. Phyllis's folks would have been proud to see what a crowd their little girl drew. Phyllis and I met 62 years ago. Her sister Marilyn and my then soon-to-be sister-in-law, Mary Lynn Silverson, were roommates at Newcomb College. Marilyn's younger and thoroughly innocent sister, Phyllis, was coming to visit Marilyn and Mary Lynn, and they wanted to fix her up with a thoroughly safe and innocuous rather than a potentially wild and crazy college man. So my name came up, a rural high schooler, as yet unjaded by New Orleans and by Tulane fraternities. I don't recall whether it was Marilyn or my brother Charles or Mary Lynn who asked me to participate, but I nervously agreed. I was nervous because I had little experience dating and absolutely no experience with big city girls like from Birmingham, Alabama. I picked Phyllis up at Doris Hall on the Newcomb campus. My intention was to drive down to the French Quarter, of which I had at least a passing knowledge and an impression as to how to get there. But I took a wrong turn and ended up at the cemetery end of Canal Street. I had to make a U-turn to get back to the livelier part of town. Mortified, I really don't remember much about the rest of what we did that evening. I know that I didn't make a favorable impression on Phyllis on that first date. I know that because sometimes later she told me that. Phyllis was, one of her many virtues was complete honesty. But while she wasn't impressed with me, I was smitten with her from the get-go. She was pretty, she was smart, she was funny, and at least at that time she did a very good job of not showing her disappointment with the quality of her blind date. So I persisted in pursuing the relationship, and fortunately I somehow succeeded, and I have been blessed with sharing life with the sweetest person in the world for 62 years. I have thought a lot in the last couple of months about what I would say today about the person who generously shared her life with me, the person who has been my wife, my best friend, my confidant, and when necessary, my best critic. She often saved me from my own self-destructive doubts. She was the person who gave me 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. She was the person who created for all of us a loving home life and who has been my love for 62 years. In thinking about what I may say today about Phyllis, 2 words seemed most appropriate: nice and kind. There was never a mean bone in Phyllis's body. She was nice and respectful to everyone that she met. She was never a respecter of class, social, or economic status that a person might have. She treated everyone with the same level of kindness and respect. Over the years, we were fortunate enough to be able to afford to hire people to help us in our home, helping with the housework, caring for the children when they were little. Phyllis never pulled rank on anyone, never treated anyone as less than equals, never ordered them around. Her parents taught her to always say please and thank you, and that is how she always treated everyone. A wonderful testament to Phyllis came some years ago from a lady named Touro Synagogue, now of blessed memory, who worked in our home for a long time and helped us raise our children. Dolores told Jeffrey after he had grown up, and I quote, "I never liked white people until I met your mom." Jeffrey commissioned Simone, the artist, to memorialize that statement in a sign that hangs in our breakfast room and that I look at with a smile every day, appreciating the wonderful person who agreed to marry me. Phyllis's life was filled with acts of kindness for others, many small and many not so small. Phyllis never forgot a friend's birthday or anniversary or a child's bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. She always wrote condolence letters at times that others were suffering loss. And if a friend was suffering, Phyllis always provided a shoulder to cry on and thoughtful words of condolence and hopefulness. When Phyllis worked at Gentry's for many years, people would come in not just to shop, but to talk to Phyllis, who made countless friends at that store. She was a good listener. She was like Lucy in the Peanuts cartoon. If you remember Lucy's 5-cent psychiatric counseling stand, that was Phyllis. But for her counseling, she waived the 5-cent fee. The biggest act of Phyllis's kindness that I remember was in 2003. In 2002 and 2003, Phyllis had her first bout with breast cancer. It was very tough on her, a mastectomy followed by months of chemotherapy. She was very sick for months. Then, as she was finishing her chemotherapy and just as she was recovering, 3 of our friends, 2 men and a woman, were very ill. And within about 6 weeks of each other, all 3 of those friends died, just when Phyllis was starting to feel better. She was the sole survivor with all of the emotional weight that being the sole survivor carried with it. But the woman in that group of 3, Sandy, was one of Phyllis's very, very close friends. And Sandy was dying of breast cancer, the very same disease that Phyllis had just survived. Phyllis was with Sandy a lot in her last weeks. And when it was clear that the end was near, Phyllis insisted that we be with Sandy at her home at the end. I stayed downstairs, but Phyllis stayed upstairs at her friend's bedside all day and all night until she passed away in the wee hours the next morning. Phyllis, how Phyllis did it, I'm not sure, but that was Phyllis. She would not leave her friend. While Phyllis was always kind and nice, she also had a keen and sometimes wicked sense of humor. Phyllis never did tell canned jokes. Rather, she was a keen observer of people and events around us. And she could incisively and with good humor comment thereon. Just before the day of our wedding, Phyllis and I met with the rabbi at Temple Beth El in Birmingham, the rabbi who would be conducting the wedding ceremony. Beth El is a beautiful, very conservative, very, very conservative congregation. The rabbi had obviously been briefed that Phyllis was marrying into a very, very reformed Jewish family. At that time, Touro Synagogue was perhaps militantly reformed. So the rabbi wanted to make a few important points, but gently, without scaring the groom away. I particularly remember him saying to me, "Jack, of course I don't expect you all to necessarily keep a strictly kosher home. But of course, I would certainly not expect you to bring into the home a ham sandwich." Phyllis and I both listened with great respect. Then, as we were driving home from the meeting, Phyllis said to me about that ham sandwich thing, "If you bring a ham sandwich home, you better bring a second one for me." At that point, I knew that our marriage would work out just fine. But in deference to Phyllis's parents, Goldie and Sidney, whom I loved dearly, I don't think that I ever brought a ham sandwich into the house. Phyllis's dad, Sidney Zeff, was one of the most selfless and kind men I ever have known. He took care of his extended family and of his community. Until he died at age 96, he drove other old people, some of them 20 years his junior, to their doctor's appointments. Phyllis was obviously a role model, Sidney was obviously Phyllis's role model. Kind, gentle, and he gave of himself. Another of Phyllis's memorable social observations that epitomized her sharp mind and sense of humor happened years later. Remember that Phyllis and I have lived for 60 years in the New Orleans legal community. And lawyers are very much like hairdressers in that we love gossip, particularly salacious gossip. So it came to pass one summer that a particularly salacious event occurred at a very large and prestigious law firm. Let's call it the ABC law firm. At first, information freely leaked out of the firm's office. But on about day 2, management of the firm effectively sealed the leaks as though it never happened. 2 years later, riots broke out at Tiananmen Square in Beijing, China. It was front page news around the world. But then the Chinese government cut off all information as though it never happened. Phyllis's immediate, dry observation voiced to me was that the Communist Party must have hired the ABC law firm to handle damage control. I don't think that even Steve Colbert could have made a more insightful observation. In 1965, Phyllis was a freshman at LSU. I was a sophomore at Tulane. I went to visit her in Baton Rouge one weekend. We wanted to see a movie, but there wasn't much playing. By default, we ended up in a theater in which we were about the only people present. We were there to see a movie that apparently nobody wanted to see. The movie was simply a recording of a British stage show called Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. It was performed on a blank stage, no props, no scenery. There were just 4 players, and the sole male player wore clown face makeup. It was a story of that one man's life, but it was really an any man story. He was born, he grew up, he had big ambitions. And as to his ambitions, he sang, "Gonna build a mountain." He got married, he had 2 children, both girls. And he bemoaned the fact that he had no son. He may have blamed his wife for that. He was successful in business. He made a lot of money, traveled the world. He even ran for and was elected to Parliament. But later in life, he realized that he had really missed the point of life. In his quest for success and adulation, he had not fully appreciated what God had given to him, his wonderful wife. So he sings, "What kind of fool am I?" And finally, he sings to his wife a song that has been in my mind for 60 years. But more and more in my mind as the years have accumulated. I sang the song to Phyllis at our 50th wedding anniversary party, and I have whispered it to her repeatedly when we were alone together over the last 2 months. I hope she heard it at the end. It goes something like this. You're worth so much more than me, Phyllis. Believe you me, Phyllis. You know it's true. When I think of all the men you could have loved, the men you should have loved, who would have loved you too. Maybe Mr. Freud could tell you why. I'll love you till I die. You know it's true. But who needs Freud's advice? It may work with mice, but not with someone nice like you. And if we could live twice, I'd make life paradise for someone really nice, like you. So, here we are today. My wife, my best friend, the love of my life has died. What happens next? Is there a life after death? Is there a heaven? Is there an afterlife reward for being a good person? I hope and I pray that there is, because Phyllis certainly deserves the greatest happiness that God can offer for any of us. But I don't and can't know that for sure. However, there's one thing that I know to an absolute certainty and truth, and it certainly applies to Phyllis. And that truth comes from a comforting passage in our prayer book. The person I love has died, but she still lives here on earth in the acts of goodness and kindness that she has performed, in the love that she has shared, and in the hearts of those of us who cherish her memory. Her life has been and will forever be a blessing. Amen. Thank you all for being here to remember and celebrate Phyllis's life.
Shamayim, Shamayim, Va'aretz, Al Yiten, Lamot Raglacha, Yanum Shomracha Inne lo Yanum lo Yishad Shomer Yisrael Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri.
One of the closing blessings at a funeral or memorial service in our tradition is known as El Malei Rachamim, God full of compassion. Standing at a graveside or joined together in a sanctuary, it encompasses that last yearning call that we make to God when one of our loved ones has died. for their safety, for their support, for them to not be alone. As we offer this blessing of El Maleh Rachamim, we invite all you who are able to please rise. God of abundant mercy, God Most High, may the soul of Pesha Batzundel Vagolda, Phyllis Jane Ziff Alltmont, who has gone into eternity, find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace among the holy and the pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold her close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find her home with you. May she rest in peace. And together we all say, Amen.
El Maleh Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah, B'malot Kedoshim Utorim, Kezohar Arakia Mazyirim, Et Nishmat Pesha Batzundel Vagolda, Shalcha L'Olama, Bal HaRachamim, Yastireha B'Seter Knafecha L'Olamim, Utzror B'Tzror HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach B'Shalom HaMishkava, V'nomar Amen.
God, you give us reason to bless you and to thank you each and every day, but never quite like we do today, for the gift and the blessing and the love and the presence of Phyllis Alltmont. For those who wish, we invite you to join us as we offer our blessing of Mourner's Kaddish, a blessing which, in its English form, you may see, has no reference to sadness, to death, to despair of any kind, but rather full of gratitude for such a life well lived. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uv'yizman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam U'Lalmei Almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei D'Kudusha B'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'miran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all people Israel, to which we say, Amen. You can be seated.
In the rising of the sun, we remember. In the blowing of the wind, we remember. In the opening of buds, we remember. We remember. In the blueness of the sky, we remember. In the rustling of the leaves, we remember. As the year starts and it ends, we remember. We remember. When we're weary and need strength, we remember. When we're lost and sick at heart, we remember. When we've joys we yearn to share, we remember. We remember. So long as we live, she too shall live. She is now a part of us. She is now a part of us. She is now a part of us. As we remember, we remember. As we remember.
In just a moment, we, the community of love and support for Phyllis's family, will offer a statement of blessing and of support for them together. We'll conclude in just a moment after that with a closing song, and as that song is playing and being sung, we'll invite Phyllis's family to make their way over through these doors and through the foyer to a small reception that everyone is invited to afterwards. We'll allow them, of course, a few moments to get themselves refreshed and posted up someplace so that whoever would like can come up and offer some words of love and lots of hugs, I'm sure. If I can ask all of you in the front 2 rows to stand for just a moment and to turn and face the community of those who joined you. And if I can ask our congregation, our community, to also rise and to join with me in a recitation of these words. Hamakom Yinachem Etchem Betoch Sha'ar Avlei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May God console you with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. You can be seated, except if you're one of the family members, and as you do, and as our song of Oseh Shalom, God Grant Us Peace, is played, we'll invite you all to make your way into the Grant Meyer Garden Pavilion. Thank you all.